thing about Meghan and Harry is that they started even before the wedding. I mean, the damage started before the wedding. She was dissatisfied, and of course it's gone on.
Meghan, before she gets married, meets a very, very famous and important member of the British establishment. And that person is brought in every 3 to 4 weeks to Kensington Palace to tell Meghan about what her duties will be and how her life will follow her marriage to Harry, a part of the royal family. And that person very quickly discovered that Meghan was not going to obey any rules. She had no intention of staying, and that she was going to be a huge problem. And they realized that this was a marriage which was not going to last in Britain.
They want all the perks, the titles, and the baubles and the power, but don't want to actually come back to Britain and rule the work. They wanted to just milk the system from Montecito.
Beautifully charming, spoiled, badly educated, simple-minded and demanding, and that previous girlfriend said he lacked class, was unromantic, unserious, short-tempered, imperious. What on earth did Meghan see in that then?
She saw someone who's needy. She saw somebody
she could fix.
Who she could use and who could serve her purposes.
She undoubtedly manipulated him and used and exploited his weaknesses. I think that she, in her wedding alone, when she had those all the Hollywood people there she didn't know, was plotting her return.
The royal wedding looked like something straight out of a perfect storybook, but not everyone sees it that way. Behind all the smiles, cameras, and polished moments, there are claims that suggest things might not have been as smooth as they seemed. And once you start hearing these different perspectives, it really makes you look at everything a little differently. One of the main voices stirring up this conversation is Tom Bower, who presents a version of events that feels way less like a fairy tale and way more strategic. According to his viewpoint, the relationship between Meghan Markle and Prince Harry didn't just happen out of nowhere. He suggests there may have been intention behind it.
She is completely obsessed by herself. She's so unbelievably immune to anyone else's feelings. And that is, of course, why, in my view, she invents issues like she did about this whole conversation about Archie, the colour of Archie's skin. Everything is done to focus back on her. Everything is about her. The generosity is only about, if I express philanthropic views, how to reflect on me. And I think that's fine for her, except that she's doing it at the expense of our royal family.
From that angle, Meghan is described as someone who had been trying to move into more elite social circles for a while. The idea here is that she wasn't just focused on acting or public life, but also on building connections with powerful and influential people. So when Harry came into her life, some believe it lined up perfectly with that path she was already on. And that's where things start to get people talking even more, because around that same period, her previous marriage to Trevor Engelson came to an end. Not saying one caused the other, but the timing has definitely been pointed out by those who question how everything unfolded. Of course, it's important to remember, this is one perspective, not a confirmed fact. But it still adds a layer that many people didn't consider when looking at their love story.
I mean, this was a calculated attempt against the family. And this is the other thing, which is one of the many, many lies she tells, that she arrived in London, full career, single girl, wasn't interested. Of course, she'd been coming to London since 2013, hunting for a man to marry. She wanted an Englishman. She was on a manhunt.
And she also wanted a famous.
And she arrived in London immediately when she went to Wimbledon, talked to the woman she was working for, and said, "You know Harry, can you arrange a blind date?" And the woman did. The whole thing is a tissue of lies.
Another point that keeps coming up is Meghan's own statement about not knowing much about the royal family before meeting Harry. That's something she said publicly, but according to Bower's claims, that might not tell the full story. He suggests she actually took time to learn as much as possible about Harry and his world beforehand. Now again, that's not something confirmed. But it's the kind of claim that makes people pause and think, because if true, it would completely change how that first connection is viewed. Then there's the situation with Harry's inner circle, and this is where things reportedly started to feel a bit tense. During a 2017 weekend at Sandringham, conversations reportedly touched on topics like sexism, feminism, and transgender issues. And from what's been shared, Meghan didn't just sit back quietly.
What I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And there's no doubt she targeted Harry and found someone who was a childhood friend of his who could introduce them. And then on the days before they met at their blind meeting in a club in London, she researched Harry very carefully.
Instead, it's said she challenged some of the remarks being made, calling out what she felt wasn't appropriate. Now, depending on how you look at it, that could be seen as standing her ground, or as something that didn't sit well with people who were used to a different kind of dynamic. And that tension didn't just stay in one place. At another event in Jamaica, tied to one of Harry's friends, there were also reports of Meghan coming across as distant and critical. Complaints about the food and service were mentioned in some accounts, and it reportedly added to the growing disconnect. Again, these are reported experiences, not confirmed truths. But when you stack them together, they start to paint a picture of relationships slowly becoming strained. And that might explain why, as the wedding got closer, some of Harry's longtime friends didn't seem as present as people expected. For such a major life moment, that absence didn't go unnoticed. At the same time, Meghan's own family situation was unfolding in a very public way.
She researched Harry very carefully and knew exactly what buttons to press, that he would like Africa, was interested in animals, was interested in philanthropy. She's very tactile, she's very seductive, and she landed him on the first night, even on his own admission. He says, I realized on the first date, she was the one. And of course, that's because she's also a great, in that sense, an actress. She knew exactly how to...
Right before the wedding, her father became part of a media situation involving staged paparazzi photos, which quickly turned into a huge talking point. On top of that, his health issues meant he wasn't able to attend the ceremony at all. And just like that, what should have been a smooth lead-up turned into something much more complicated. When you step back and look at everything together, it doesn't exactly match the flawless image that was presented to the world. And one detail that really stood out, aside from her mother, Doria Ragland, no other immediate family members were there on the big day. That alone had people raising questions and looking a little closer at the full story. Now here's where things start getting even more complicated, because the tension wasn't just behind the scenes, it was happening right in front of everyone.
This particular saga at Sandringham, which obviously was told by someone who was there, was a decisive moment. I mean, it's the moment where effectively she says to Harry that you've got to dump all your friends. And none of those people at his shooting weekend were then invited to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, that was the crunch, that she separated him from his hinterland. And of course, he does suffer now enormously.
When it came to the wedding guest list, one detail stood out instantly. Meghan's own siblings didn't receive invitations. And that alone had people talking non-stop. For a moment that big, people expected some kind of family unity. But instead, it felt like the opposite. And that's when the situation with her father added even more pressure to everything. There were reports that King Charles III actually suggested Meghan consider flying to the United States to speak with her father face to face. The idea was simple. Try to calm things down before the wedding and avoid more public drama. But according to what's been said, Meghan declined that suggestion, pointing to concerns around privacy and security.
And happened when they went to Tommy Inskip's wedding in Jamaica, which was a great friend of Harry's, who in the end was banned from the dinner after their wedding.
Yeah, well, I know at least 3 of the very good friends were apparently
banned, all by Meghan.
And then they saw all these celebrities filing in.
Exactly.
Who'd known her about 3 minutes.
Yeah,
Now, depending on how you look at it, that decision can be seen in very different ways. Some people understood the hesitation, while others felt it only made the situation worse. Either way, it reportedly didn't sit well with certain senior royals and added tension during what was supposed to be a celebratory time. Then there's another layer that really caught people's attention. According to Tom Bower, during the engagement period, Prince Harry was drawing comparisons between Meghan and his late mother, Princess Diana. And that right there sparked a lot of mixed reactions. For some, it felt emotional and meaningful. But for others, it crossed a line. because Diana's legacy was built over years of public service, and many felt those comparisons were being made too quickly. There were even claims that certain elements, like the wedding presentation, the veil, and the overall storytelling, seemed to lean into that connection. Again, not confirmed facts, but definitely something people were discussing heavily. And when you combine emotion with public perception like that, it's bound to stir things up. While all of this was unfolding, the palace staff were working nonstop to make the wedding perfect. Every detail was being handled with precision, following traditions that had been in place for generations.
Royally embarrassed, Thomas Markle Sr. is being accused of working with the paparazzi to stage a series of photos and then sell them for thousands of dollars. From getting measured for his wedding suit and exercising before the big day, to reading articles about the royal couple inside an internet cafe, Meghan's father is causing deep embarrassment now for the palace. And now Meghan Markle's half-sister, Samantha Grant, is taking responsibility.
I have to say I am entirely the culprit. There's a lot of scrutiny that it was money motivated. It was not. It was my
But here's where things reportedly started to clash. Meghan was described as having a very strong vision for how she wanted everything to look. And instead of simply following royal protocol, she was said to challenge it. Now, depending on perspective, that could be seen as confidence or as resistance to long-standing traditions. Either way, it reportedly created friction with staff members who were used to a very structured way of doing things. Some felt overwhelmed by constant changes and detailed requests, while others felt their input wasn't being fully valued. And this is where the atmosphere allegedly started to shift. There were claims that communication became tense, with staff feeling like every interaction could lead to new instructions or last-minute adjustments. That kind of pressure, it doesn't go unnoticed. One situation that keeps getting mentioned is the discussion around bridesmaid dresses.
Why did Harry never go to meet Thomas?
Why is that?
Well, I think because Meghan didn't want him to meet a fat old man. I mean, Meghan was very worried. That's why she brought her mother across the wedding just 2 days before the ceremony.
What do we know about her mum? Her mum's a mysterious figure.
Very mysterious. The book tells it all. I mean, the mother really was a very odd woman, disappeared for 10 years effectively during her childhood. That's why Thomas had to bring her up. And in the end, what Thomas says is that it was Doria who really engineered the split between himself and Meghan, because she wanted the fame and the glory.
Catherine, Princess of Wales, was said to have offered suggestions during the process. But according to reports, those ideas weren't taken on board, as Meghan preferred things done her way. Now, it's important to say, disagreements happen, especially during big events like this. But the way this situation was described made it sound like those small moments added up over time. And when you stack everything together, the family tensions, the public comparisons, and the behind-the-scenes pressure, it starts to paint a picture that's a lot more intense than the polished version people saw on the outside.
The idea that she was Diana was always a fantasy, both of herself and of Harry. And Harry completely misunderstood his mother, who he obviously barely knew, and didn't realize what a manipulative and determined woman she was herself. So he completely misjudged the comparison between Meghan and his mother had amazing status. She looked beautiful, she had terrific poise, she worked very hard at being a royal, she was very empathetic with a lot of sick people, none of the things that Meghan would ever dream of doing.
As the wedding hype kept building, there was something else going on that not everyone noticed at first, the way the public image was being shaped. And according to Tom Bauer, that part may have been just as important as the wedding itself. From his point of view, Meghan Markle, along with Prince Harry, was very focused on how everything looked to the outside world. The idea here is that every appearance, every headline, and every detail was carefully considered to fit a certain image. And sometimes that reportedly didn't line up smoothly with a more traditional, low-key approach expected within the royal system. One example that keeps getting brought up is her feature with Vanity Fair back in 2017. The headline famously read, "She's just wild about Harry." Now that line caught a lot of attention, but according to reports, Meghan wasn't too happy with it. The reason, it was said she wanted the focus to be more on her humanitarian work rather than her relationship.
Harry and Meghan, where they invited people they barely knew.
Oprah Winfrey, George Clooney. Also, do you remember how Meghan announced her pregnancy at that wedding? How rude was that, Sally?
That's right, it was. Yeah, she did that. But the other thing that Liza talked to me about is that Harry and Meghan just disinvited or didn't invite a whole group of cousins, the children of the Prince and Princess Michael of Kent, of the Gloucesters. She just X'd them out. She and Harry just X'd them out of the guest list. And they added all these other random people who barely even knew the royal family.
But at the same time, critics pointed out that the relationship itself was becoming a huge part of her public identity. So even while trying to shift the spotlight, the attention kept circling back to Harry. And that's where things start to feel a little more layered. Because on one side, you have someone trying to control how they're seen. And on the other, a narrative that keeps pulling in a different direction. According to Bauer's interpretation, Meghan was highly driven and very aware of the kind of influence that comes with being part of the royal family. Now, it's important to stress, these are claims and opinions, not confirmed facts, but they've definitely shaped how some people view the situation. There are even stronger opinions out there suggesting that her ambitions went far beyond just being part of the royal circle. Some critics have speculated that she wanted a much bigger role and a higher level of influence. Again, that's not something proven, but it's part of the conversation that continues to follow her story.
The whole problem she found with this last Vanity Fair issue, the hustle issue, is that she couldn't control the content. And she is somebody who believes, understandably, she's got to control everything down to the last. So I think she is very much in control of what is being said, and she is utterly passionate about her image. I mean, that is everything that matters. She's a creature of Hollywood. She knows that celebrity images is what earns the money, and that's what she must bring.
At the same time, this narrative also touches on how Harry's position changed after the marriage. There's been talk that he found himself in difficult situations balancing his relationship with Meghan and his connection to the royal family. And over time, that reportedly created visible tension. Now, looking at it from another angle, some believe Meghan wasn't just thinking about royal life, she may have also been keeping future opportunities in mind. Because when you look back at the wedding guest list, it wasn't just filled with royal figures, it was packed with major names from the entertainment world. At the time, people saw it as a blending of two different worlds. But later on, critics started to question whether those connections were part of something bigger. The idea being that relationships were being built early on, possibly opening doors beyond royal duties. And when you think about what happened later with their shift away from royal roles, that theory started to gain even more attention. Of course, none of this is officially confirmed. But when you line up all these details, the media positioning, the guest list, the public image focus, it creates a version of events that feels very different from the simple love story many people first believed.
I think that's very important. We know the background and the motivation of a woman who clearly married into the royal family because she loved Harry. Don't doubt that, but also because she liked the status. But in the end, very quickly, she discovered that she wasn't get the status of number one, which is what she wanted. There is only one number one in the royal family, and the rest of the family is there to support the Queen. And Meghan didn't understand why she wasn't in the spotlight, and very quickly decided she'd be better off in Hollywood.
And that's what keeps this whole situation so talked about. Because depending on which perspective you follow, it can either look like a natural evolution or something that was carefully planned from the very beginning. Now, this is where the narrative takes a sharper turn, because some claims don't just question the relationship, they completely flip how people see it. According to Tom Bauer, the royal wedding wasn't just a romantic milestone. It may have also worked as a major stepping point in something much bigger. From that perspective, Meghan Markle is described as someone who understood exactly what kind of platform she was stepping into. The global attention, the connections, the influence, all of it came with being alongside Prince Harry. And according to these claims, that spotlight may have opened doors far beyond royal life.
Didn't want to have to walk behind Kate Middleton, the future queen. She felt that they should be treated as equals. And yet she joined an organization in which they're not equals.
Well, I think the big shock came to her in a way when she moved into Kensington Palace. And Harry has got a 2/3 small cottage in that complex. And literally on the other side of the corridor, Kate and William have a 22-room apartment with 2 kitchens. And so that came as a bit of a shock to Meghan. But I think that was a shock she could overcome because she didn't intend to stay. And that was the other part of the problem, so to speak. But of course, the 2 women didn't get it.
People started pointing to what happened after the wedding. Major media deals, global partnerships, and a level of visibility that reached way beyond what she had before. Now, to be clear, none of that is unusual for public figures, Meghan. But critics argue the timing made it look like everything was part of a bigger picture. And this is where the conversation gets even more intense. Because Bauer goes as far as suggesting that Meghan's decisions in relationships may have been influenced by long-term goals rather than emotion. That's a strong claim, and not something confirmed, but it's one that keeps coming up in discussions. Some point to patterns in her past, like the end of her marriage to Trevor Engelson, and interpret those moments as strategic moves.
Meghan had been bullying staff. He said that a couple of members of staff had been driven out by Meghan's behavior, but there were women who worked for her who were absolutely broken by her. They felt humiliated, they felt bullied.
And I think on the Kate front, I have absolutely no doubt at all that it was Kate who cried. Because Meghan, as I show in the book, is a bully. And Kate's unhappiness really stemmed from the fact that Meghan's staff, which she shared with Kate, were constantly complaining that Meghan was treating them appallingly and bullying them, isolating them, humiliating them. It was terrible. And if there's any doubt about Meghan's ability to her treatment of people, you've got to read the chapter of her photo filming in Montreal for the Reitman's ad, a department store in Canada, where she bullied the crew mercilessly.
Others mention the distance from certain family members or former friends, saying it shows a tendency to move forward without looking back. Now again, this is all interpretation, not proven fact. But when people connect those dots, they build a narrative that feels very calculated. On the other side of that, there's Harry, and his role in all of this is just as important. Because from the outside, it looked like he was fully committed, standing by Meghan no matter what. In fact, some reports describe him as being extremely protective, even when it meant stepping outside of royal norms. One moment that keeps getting brought up is the tiara selection before the wedding. According to reports, when a specific option was suggested, Meghan wasn't completely on board with it, and Harry's reaction was described as, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets." That phrase alone reportedly didn't sit well with Queen Elizabeth II. Whether that exact wording is accurate or not, the situation itself became a talking point because it suggested a shift in how decisions were being handled compared to traditional royal expectations. And it didn't stop there.
Now to the ginger and the whinger, Meghan Markle and Harry, Prince Harry. Well, Meghan's in trouble again. She's facing all sorts of new bullying allegations. We've seen her bullying antics make headlines in the past, but these latest claims against her, well, they represent a new low. She stands accused of reducing Kate Middleton to tears after being critical of Princess Charlotte's wedding attire. In his new book, Revenge, investigative journalist and best-selling author Tom Bauer claims that Meghan compared Princess Charlotte unfavourably to her best friend Jessica's daughter during a bridesmaid fitting in the lead up to the wedding. And according to the author, Kate, who was already irritated by complaints of Meghan bullying her staff, broke down in tears.
There were also claims that Harry began creating distance between himself and certain friends who had concerns about the relationship. Not confirmed across the board, but enough reports surfaced for people to notice a change. During the wedding preparations, that protectiveness reportedly continued. Harry was said to shield Meghan from criticism, stepping in during moments of tension involving staff or protocol issues. Now, from one angle, that looks like loyalty and support. But from another, some felt it added pressure to an already tense environment. And when you bring all of these pieces together, the strong opinions, the reported patterns, the shifting dynamics, it creates a version of events that feels way more complex than the simple love story people first saw. Because at the center of it all, there are two completely different interpretations. One sees a couple building a life together under intense pressure, and the other sees a situation where every move might have been part of something bigger. So when you put everything together, all these claims, opinions, and behind-the-scenes stories shared by Tom Bauer, the picture looks a lot more complicated than the fairy tale people were first shown. From the public image to the family tensions and even the wedding itself, it really depends on how you choose to see it. Now, I've got to ask you, which of these points actually caught you off guard the most? Was it the family drama, the media strategy, or the reported tensions behind closed doors? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk about it. And if you made it this far, make sure you hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. There's another video popping up on your screen right now. Go check it out for even more celebrity drama. See you in the next one.